Let's first talk about how Miami and LeBron got off to such a fast start, and here it starts with intensity as Ray Allen pressures Danny Green into a turnover, which directly leads to a LeBron dunk in transition. Horns is a set Miami runs quite often with 2 men at the high post, 2 wings in the corner, and a point guard with the ball up top. Here LeBron passes it to the high post and he'll screen away for Ray Allen, and usually he'd receive a flex screen from Rashard Lewis, but here he just decides to post up, so Bosh passes it to Lewis and they get it in the post to LeBron and he gets fouled. Nice. The Heat are best when they can use their athletic gifts in transition, and when they push it, LeBron gets a putback dunk. Notice how Parker and Diaw though don't box out at all. And here they'll run a flex set where Allen will set a cross screen for Wade and then he'll receive a down screen from Lewis, and they get Wade for a layup but he blows it. Far too often in my opinion, LeBron settles for long twos and inefficient shot, but here he takes a rhythm 3 with his feet right behind the line. Here off Horns they'll run the pick and roll, and far too often I see Chris Bosh popping for long jumpers, but here he rolls to the basket and gets a layup. Beautiful. Here they run the same play, and when they don't get Bosh on the roll, they simply move the ball, start driving and kicking, and they're looking like the Spurs offense and they get a foul. That was a bad call, but that doesn't take away from the great ball movement. And what do you know, it's the loop play for Ray Allen where he'll receive 3 screens around the world, and here he cuts it back on the first side, and San Antonio has to switch it, which leaves Tony Parker guarding Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh nicely posts him up, drives, forces rotation, and Lewis drains a 3. Early, the Spurs had just too many sequences like this. Here off motion weak, DL could use Ginobili's cross screen or use Duncan's down screen. Here he uses Duncan's down screen and gets wide open, but just doesn't shoot the shot. That is a wide open shot he needs to take, and that stalls the offense. And here off an offensive rebound, the Spurs get a fresh 24 seconds, and Tony Parker drives baseline, and usually he'll just bring this out, but instead he forces up a crazy layup attempt. Just uncharacteristic, and that leads to LeBron and 1. Here they'll set a screen for the screen and roll screener, a great idea, and that leaves Bonner behind. They have to switch, and that gets LeBron in isolation against Matt Bonner. Rotation is forced, they swing the ball, and Ray Allen gets a wide open 3. And just to show you what went wrong on this rotation, since Leonard was the primary helper, Mills did the right thing to cover for his man, but Splitter needs to run to Allen and Leonard needs to cover Bosh, but Splitter doesn't get to Allen nearly quick enough and they hit the shot. And here San Antonio even messes up one of their pet plays, the hammer, where Leonard drives baseline and they set a weak side screen for Danny Green, but give credit to Bergman as he reads this and gets a steal. And even more uncharacteristic, the Spurs fail to pick up their men in transition and Chris Bosh gets wide open. Let's talk Manu Ginobili, cause he got off to a slow start, missing a few of his jumpers, and to me, from my perspective, what got him fired up was a little scrum with Shane Battier that seemed to get him a little mad, and you never want Manu Ginobili mad, and what do you know, on the next possession, he hits a tough 3. And to me, he seemed more aggressive and more effective the rest of the half, which helped San Antonio get a lead. And while the Spurs got off to a slow start, they had some great offensive clips later, so let's get to that. Now, because Miami hedges their pick and rolls, Battier has to bump Splitter, which leaves Leonard open, and because Anderson hedged, he was still recovering, so Leonard could have actually hit Splitter on the high-low, but instead he drains a 3. To start the second quarter, Pop draws up an alley-oop play for Kawhi Leonard. They clear out one side, Splitter sets a back screen, and Leonard gets a dunk. Here it's Tony Parker's turn to run the loop, and notice that Dwayne Wade goes over this Splitter screen, so Parker smartly flares it to the corner, moves the ball, and they get a wide open look for Green. Here it's Manu's turn to get 3 screens around the world, and notice how Chris Bosh will step out on that screen, which leaves Duncan open just like a middle pick and roll, and Duncan gets an and 1. Gorgeous. Let's talk about what happens when a guard passes it to the high post. Leonard here has 2 options. He can cut around Duncan in a pinch post type of fashion and receive a pitch, or cut away and receive a flare screen to the opposite side and possibly curl it for a layup. Here he chooses the pinch post and gets a layup. Here Parker chooses to cut away for a flare screen, but there really isn't a flare screen. This is more of an isolation for DL, but he turns it over. Here Green chooses the flare screen and actually gets a flare screen and curls it to the basket for a layup. The pass is a bit late, but he still gets a great shot. Notice here how Patty Mills goes for the pinch post, but because there's a man in the strong side corner, after Mills gets the pitch, he can execute a dribble handoff with Green, the man in the corner, and then Green can receive a screen with DL. This is a high post split type action. They do that, they move the ball, and they eventually will get Duncan in the post, and they get a nice foul when Parker cuts to the basket. And what do you know? The same exact sequence we saw earlier off motion weak, DL uses Duncan's down screen, but instead of passing on the wide open shot this time, he takes it and makes it. Here they run a play where they'll set 2 screens for Duncan to get great post position, and he does that and scores. I don't see how the Heat cannot double Tim Duncan and Haslam doesn't have a chance. Hedging high puts Haslam out of position, so Parker can swing the ball and they can go high-low, and Duncan gets a layup. They run a double staggered pick and roll with DL popping and Duncan rolling, and here they hit Duncan in great post position and he gets fouled. And to be quite honest, not doubling Duncan is quite laughable. Now it's not just San Antonio's offense that's great, their defense is great too, and if I had to show you one clip throughout this whole game, this would be it. On ice, notice how Leonard doesn't allow James Middle while Splitter contains. They contain this, and when Patty Mills helps out, Bonner nicely rotates to the corner to take away the Allen 3, and they rotate accordingly. They contain that, and watch how they perform ice well, and look at Splitter. He rotates perfectly from the weak side. Bonner performs sink and fill to take away the Anderson pass, leaving Allen knowing someone has his back, and Ginobili does his job by closing out to force the miss. But showing this clip to you would be a close second. So many teams double from one pass away, and here, Splitter does a great job doubling from the weak side. While they're doubling LeBron, 3 San Antonio defenders zone between 4 Heat players. Then you gotta love it, Bonner says no middle, he makes Cole drive baseline, Splitter is already in position to help weak side, and Cole travels but gets away with it. Again, notice how Duncan aggressively does not allow Middle, knowing he has help to the weak side, and they force a turnover. Why not allow Middle? Watch what happens when Parker gets Middle penetration. All 4 of his San Antonio teammates are 1 pass away, and you never help 1 pass away, no one steps up and he gets a floater. Watch how ice works as Duncan can sink back to contain the LeBron drive. Again, watch how Ginobili forces sideline, Duncan steps up for weak side help, and they recover and force a miss. Watch when the Spurs drive baseline, there's no weak side help. It's night and day, Ray Allen doesn't even bother to step up, and Mills gets a layup. And if you're not a Thiago Splitter fan, become one, because this guy is the Beethoven of weak side help. Mario Chalmers is not. It's a shame Dwayne Wade never developed an outside 3-point shot, because once he lost his athleticism, he needs that, and now he just takes long, inefficient 2s. Notice how Ginobili can help 1 pass away on Wade because he's not an outside threat, and James is forced to take a tough jumper. Let's talk the Heat offense, because after their hot start, their offense began to cool down dramatically. Here, they run a set I like where they'll UCLA cut Ray Allen, and then they'll flow into a pick and roll, and on the weak side, Ray Allen will run off a screen. And they get the switch they want with Parker guarding Bosch, but instead of Bosch attacking Parker like we saw earlier, he settles for a fadeaway jumper. Now watch them run this same set later. There's no UCLA cut, Wade doesn't even bother to set a screen, and off this Allen pin down, there's almost no contact made and they pick up an offensive foul. And watch them run the Horns pick and roll. Little to no contact by Bosch, that stalls the offense, and they eventually are forced to take a tough shot. and Bosch pays for it by being on the wrong end of a poster. And I love this set. Allen will set a pick and roll and then receive a flare screen, and he's wide open, but Wade waits way too long to give it to him, and that stalls the offense. Let me tell you, this is a great play. A pick and roll into a flare screen for D Wade and a weak side screen for Ray Allen, but if they're not going to try to set good screens, it's kind of pointless. And they're capable of good offense. Here's the blind pig, a play I rave about, where there's a man flashing to the high post and LeBron will backdoor cut, and even though he doesn't get the backdoor cut here, he seals DL for a post up and gets a dunk. Beautiful. But in general, their offense is just freelance and they just try to screen and roll for each other. And far too often, you just see them taking turns isolating. By the way, look at these Spurs legends in attendance. Great for the game of basketball. Well, that was my last NBA breakdown of this season. I see it went on a bit long, so I'll just end it by saying there are more draft videos coming up and more content throughout the summer. So stay tuned and see you next time.